still in here. Come on.
Yeah, I'll get the perfect.
You ready, son? I'm always ready. I thought I wasn't with you.
When we first moved into this house, I set up a basic media room, nothing fancy, just something that worked. I used all the old gear, the same Samsung home theater system and speakers from the old place, same projector, and a plan to slowly grow into this space. I had provided this space for a 5.1.2 setup during the build, but when we moved in, we just welcomed our son, so keeping it simple was top priority for me. Fast forward about a year and a half later and well, let's just say things changed. Our toddler is now in full explorer mode, climbing, running, and for some reason treating my speakers like they are part of his toy rotation. One day I find it in the kitchen and the next, it's hanging out with his stuffed toys. And as if that wasn't enough, the old Samsung system decided to join the chaos, randomly shutting off mid-movie. The first upgrade, speakers, and this one made all the difference. I decided to go with in-wall speakers mostly because they blend right into the space. They look clean, they keep with the minimalist vibe that I'm going for, and most importantly, they are toddler proof. My son can't pick them up and wander off with them like he did with the old setup. Now, in-wall speakers do come with a trade-off. They are not going to match the sound quality of freestanding box speakers, which have a huge advantage. They are built inside with acoustically tuned enclosures. That helps control resonance and results in a tighter, more dynamic sound. In-wall speakers rely on the wall cavity, which isn't exactly optimized. But honestly, for this room, a clean look and key safety were way more important than squeezing out every last decibel of performance. After checking out a bunch of options and watching prices climb, all thanks to Trump's trade tariffs, I settled for the monoprice caliber speaker line for all 7 speakers. When I provided the house during the build phase, it was just framing, no drywalls, no doors, so I based my speaker placement on the full 15 by 11 foot layout. But once we moved in, my brother pointed out something I hadn't noticed. The bathroom door sits between the front left speaker and the projection wall where the center and right channel speaker leave. Sound-wise it was fine, but visually it broke the symmetry and I just could not unsee it. So I decided to relocate the front left, center, and right left speakers, which means going up into the attic and moving wiring. I started out with the front 3 speakers as they were the easiest to get to. The wall had no insulation, attic access was straightforward, so I pulled back the existing cable from the old cavity, drilled new top plate hole into the new cavity and dropped the cables into the updated cavities for the left and center speakers. Before starting any cutting, I double-checked the walls with a stud finder and simulated the projector viewing using the cutout template for the speakers taped on the wall. But that's when I hit another snag. The caliber speakers were just too big. Their 8-inch driver would have cut right into my projection image. So I had to switch to the monoprice amber line for the front 3 speakers. This is the amber series from monoprice. It is slimmer than the caliber series because the caliber series, that one is an 8-inch. This is about 6.5 3-way speakers. So this is the caliber series, and then this is going to be the amber series. For me, the size is more important right now, so we're going to be shrinking down a little bit. These speakers are more expensive than the caliber series. They were 2 times more than that one, even though that one is visibly bigger. I wonder if it means that it performs much better. This is what it looks like. And this is the caliber series. It's slightly taller, but skinnier. So it also uses the, the tab style locking mechanism. So it has to grab onto like the drywall, and then that kind of locks it in place. And it uses the same magnetic grill. The tool has to be here somewhere. Okay, where is the tool? I can't seem to find the tool for this guy. No, I'm just gonna use the tool from my other one, but because right now this one seems to be missing the tool. Oh. This one is the actual entire cover that comes right off. So this one actually uses a magnet. You actually have to use the tool to pry open this one. Okay, I'm struggling with this guy right here. Can't seem to get it out. We'll come back to that a little bit later. They're slimmer, slightly pricier, but far better suited to the space. And honestly, they're just nicer to work with. The magnetic grill snaps on cleanly, unlike the caliber, which requires a tool to pry open. A process that scratched or whacked every single one I touched. I left the grills off until the very end. Another reason why I went with the same speakers across the front soundstage is timbre matching, meaning when sound moves from the left to the center to the right, it keeps the same tone and character. It is subtle, but it makes a big difference for things like dialogue clarity and immersive effects. Rear surround sounds are more forgiving, but up front, it is worth matching. When it comes to mounting your speakers or your surround sound system in your media room or a dedicated home theater, there's some set of guidelines that that's recommended to follow. Ideally, you want to make sure that the mounting height of all the speakers are at ear levels when you're seated on your couch in your room. Now, this is going to vary on a case-by-case basis depending on the type of couch you have in your room. For me, my sitting height is around 42 inches depending on who is sitting down there. If it's me, taller, my wife, shorter. So all of those things can vary and will kind of depend on your configuration. There are light switches on the other side of the wall that actually limit how high I can go. So by default, there's a maximum height I can mount my speakers because of the light switch. So my speaker has to start right after the light switch and then down. So when you're cutting holes, it is almost a permanent thing. And when I mean permanent, if you have to fix it, it is a pain in the butt because you have to drywall, mud, sand, tape, and paint, and then try and match to existing. So the best thing to do is to make sure that you measure 20 times and cut once. So what I've done is I have taken the template that came with the Amber series in-wall speakers. I've placed them on the wall, used masking tape to kind of figure out the locations that I want to put them. I've made sure to think about all the possible scenarios, so make sure to check the other side of the wall for any potential things like light switches, plumbing fixtures. Of course, the wall still had a few surprises in store. The left channel location had a stud running right through it. Shifting the speaker inward wasn't an option. It would have cut into the projection area even with the slimmer Amber Line series speaker. The stud is just there just for helping with bracing that electrical outlet. It's a double gang, so it kind of helps keeps it in place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it and then flip it kind of horizontal and then retain that support back again, and then have my speaker start right after that. But that also limited how high I could go. So I settled with a 36-inch for the front and 42 for the back speakers. Once I finalized the placement, I taped the template, marked the walls, and used an oscillating tool to make the cut. One thing I'll say is living in North America where houses are basically made of cardboard has its perks. Cutting into drywall is therapeutic. For those of you watching from brick houses in Europe, well, sorry. For the left channel, I had to cut through the stud and then reinforce it horizontally using the off-cut 2x4 wood. For both the center and right channel, I cut, test fit, and adjusted. Now, since these were all interior walls, they were hollow. So I added rock-wool, safe and sound insulation inside the cavities to minimize the sound leakage and help tighten up the audio. Then came the rear left speaker, and this one was a nightmare. It's on an exterior wall, which means full insulation, and due to the roof slope, there was no access from the attic. I went ahead and cut the speaker hole anyways, just hoping I'd figure out something along the line. Using a flex bait, I drilled into the top plate, no problem. But trying to fish a cable up through a wall stuffed with insulation into a hole I just couldn't see, now that was a mission. My friend Tochi and I spent hours trying to get the fish tape to land in the right spot. Nothing worked. So the next day, I drove to Home Depot, grabbed some glow rods, and tried a new approach. I drilled another hole next to the first one, at least so I think, and slowly pushed the glow rods up right against the flex bit and kept adding extensions until they finally became visible in the attic. And finally, victory. I tipped a new speaker cable to the rod and pulled it through the attic. Now, thankfully, when I first wired up this room, I installed a flexible PVC conduit from the media closet to the projection wall in case I ever needed to run future cabling for a TV. That decision paid off massively as the media closet is also on an exterior wall. I used this conduit to route the new cable back to the receiver inside of the media closet. As for Dolby Atmos, I originally planned to use a front firing module, but those were pricey, so I pivoted to using the ceiling mounted speakers instead. And this is where I made a classic mistake. I skipped the stud finder. I assumed the recessed lighting in the ceiling meant the area was clear, but they had used an offset bracket to place the fixture, which completely threw off my guess. I cut the first hole and boom, right into a joist. Now I had a 6.5-inch hole in a textured ceiling and no clean way to patch it. So I shifted slightly, cut 2 new holes for the speakers and pulled in the wiring. I covered the wrong cutout with its original piece and placed my unified wireless access point above it with hopes that this will conceal that cutout. It didn't quite cover the hole. Yet another drywall fix for the winter.
But if I lay down and I play dead and I stay dead, maybe you'll get sick of being the monster out of my head, under my bed. Think you're something out of my nightmares, standing right there. But if I lay down and I play dead and I stay dead, then will you get bored of killing me?
Silhouettes of you are like a taunt. Never really know just what you want. With you I don't ever feel calm. I can feel the sweat inside my palms. Play with me like cats and a string. You don't understand the pain it brings. You don't ever wanna give me wings. You don't ever wanna set me free. You know I'm addicted to you, and it's twisted you can give you.
Once all the speakers were in, it looked exactly how I imagined. Blended right in. It was time to tackle the media closet, which until now had been more of a catch-all for all my gears, wires, and whatever I didn't want to deal with in the moment. I removed everything from the closet, including the wire shelving, which left behind more holes than I cared to count. And after all the drywalling cutting I just finished with the speaker install, the last thing I wanted to do was add another round of patching. So instead, I pulled out an old roll of wallpaper and used it to cover the worst of the damage. It's not perfect, but it does the job for now. Next up was the rack. I installed the Tech Mojo 9U swing rack, which was perfect for the space. Now, since this rack lives inside of a closet, being able to swing it out for access was a must for me. I originally planned for a 12U, but thanks to yet another wave of tariffs-induced prices and hikes, the difference between the 9U and the 12U was just insane. So the 9U was all that made financial sense for me at the moment. It is mounted to a plywood backing board since it didn't hit studs on both sides of the wall. But the rack is also light enough that I didn't even need help mounting it. From there, I installed a heavy-duty tray to hold the AV receiver, the Pioneer VSX 935. Now, I picked this up during Black Friday sale last year. It is a 7.2 channel receiver that supports Dolby Atmos, HDMI 2.1, eARC, 6 HDMI inputs and 2 HDMI outputs. So there's plenty of room for future expansion. It also supports dual zone, so I could eventually run a second audio video feed to another part of the house directly from this receiver. The monoprice speakers don't need a ton of power, so pairing them up with the VSX 935 struck the right balance between performance and value. To manage power and cable routing neatly, I installed a unified PDU Pro at the bottom of the rack, and just above it added an all-steel blank plate to pass cables through neatly. I installed a light-duty tray to house the hub stack, which currently includes my Sofa Baton X1S, my Logitech Harmony hub, my Samsung SmartThings hub, my Allison Shade hub, and my Apple TV. I labeled all the speaker wires, terminated them with banana plugs, and left the subwoofer cable ready to go. Now that's because the subwoofer cable uses an RCA, which I'll deal with later on. For networking, I used a TP-Link 5-port switch to expand the 2 Ethernet ports I had previously pre-wired into this closet, more than enough to connect everything locally in this rack. Now, for the subwoofer, I had originally gone with the Kanto 8-inch sub in white. It matched the aesthetics and seemed like a good fit. But then the Polk Monitor XT12 went on sale for even less. It's a bigger subwoofer, 12-inch compared to the 8, so once the Kanto arrived, I boxed it right up and sent it back on its way. The Polk, though, it is a beast. It was way too big for the intended location I wanted to put it, which was basically on the front corner. It completely blocked the walkway, so I moved it to the back of the room and repurposed the existing cable from the original rear left speaker. Since I had installed a new wire for the relocated rear speaker, that freed up the original run perfectly for this subwoofer. Now I can have two subwoofers if I wanted to. I connected it to the LFE output on the receiver using an RCA sub cable. The VSX supports two subwoofers, but for now, one is more than enough for me. Once the gear was in place, it was time to make this room really pop. I started by shortening our modular couch. Yep, I actually removed one of the segments so that the couch can center with the projection wall. Next up, I added a side table, a fake plant because why not a bit of nature indoors, eh? And a lamp fitted with Philips Hue bulb to set that perfect ambient vibe. For the back wall, I went with the Richelieu walnut grooved wood panel. Not only do they look fantastic, but thanks to the felt backing, they double as an effective acoustic panel. Before that though, I installed an IKEA Moslander shelf flipped upside down to act as a minimalist ledge for remotes, drinks, and even your phone. It's right there on the couch level but stays visually tucked away. I had plans to add a wireless charger and a cup holder and a couple of other things in there, but thanks to some pesky tariffs, that's all on hold for now. The slab panels were next. I trimmed them with a circular saw and mounted them to the stud using a drywall screw, starting just above the Moslander shelf. Now of course, it wouldn't be my setup if there weren't some LED strips involved. I went with the Govee curve strip this time and wrapped it around the edge of the slat wall. It's a bit of a splurge at about $120 each for the 9.8 feet long strip. But I chose it over my usual nano leaf strip for one reason: curb lighting. It just looks cleaner. You don't see the individual LEDs and the light feels softer and more premium. It also supports Matter, which means, at least in theory, it should integrate with any of my smart home platforms. But spoiler alert, that didn't quite go exactly as planned. No matter what I tried, I couldn't get it to connect to any of my smart home platforms. So I switched to a workaround. I plugged the Govee strip into an Eve Energy Smart Outlet, which does support Apple HomeKit and is bridged to Home Assistant via HomeBridge. That let me control the strip indirectly. Now here's where I made a rookie mistake. I stuck the LED strip directly to the drywall using the built-in adhesive, mounted it facing outwards, and after living with it for a few days, I realized two things. One, it reflected off the projection wall in a really distracting way, and two, when I went to remove it, it ripped off a nice chunk of my drywall with it. So yeah, don't do that. Drywall damage from LED strip is way harder to fix than just patching a hole. I'll deal with this at a later time, but for now, I've repositioned the LED strip sideways so it's stuck against the slat wall and the light is glowing outwards instead of at you. And honestly, it looks way better that way. With the hardware installed and media room physically completed, the next step was automation. Connecting everything so it works seamlessly without needing multiple remotes or constant manual adjustment. Originally, I wanted to use the Logitech Harmony Elite remote, and honestly, it was perfect. It worked with Home Assistant, solid activity control, great build. But when I started taking on this room apart, I hid the remote so my son wouldn't get to it, and now I have no idea where I put it. So I pulled out the Sofa Baton X1S I had in storage, a remote I had tested last year and wasn't super impressed by. But with no better options, I gave it another go. Setup was easy enough though. The Sofa Baton comes with a hub and a remote. I added the BenQ projector, my Pioneer receiver, and the Apple TV to the app and built an activity called Watch Apple. Triggering that turns on the receiver, sets the Apple TV input and powers up the projector. But IR doesn't go through walls, and the hub is in my media closet while the projector is on the ceiling outside of the closet. So the projector never got the memo whenever the activity is triggered. Luckily, when I wired up this room, I installed the PVC conduit from the rack to the projector. I used that to run a mono cable and added an infrared blaster on the projector end. The X1S supports up to 2 blasters, and problem solved. Now here's the thing, Sofa Button doesn't integrate with Home Assistant. Harmony did, and that broke a few of my automations. So I had to work around it. One of the key automations I rely on is for the media wall light. I use a third reality millimeter wave presence sensor, and here's the cool part. It's hidden behind the painting above the couch. Because millimeter wave uses 5.8 gig radar, it can detect presence through solid objects, so it still works even when it's concealed. The sensor connects over Zigbee via the third reality hub, which supports Matter and is bridged into Home Assistant. It is important to note that while it is more accurate than a traditional motion sensor, it still operates based on motion, meaning if you sit perfectly still, it might eventually register you as gone. That said, you can tweak its detection range and sensitivity. In my setup, it triggers an EVE Energy Smart outlet that powers the Govee Curb LED strip. When presence is detected, the light turns on, and when motion is not detected, it shuts off, adding just the right touch of ambient light. But during movie playback, I wanted that automation disabled, so I switched to using the Pioneer receiver as the trigger. It integrates with Home Assistant, so now when it switches to the Apple TV input, it tells Home Assistant to suspend the light automation and also disables my Nanoleaf wall light. It also closes the SmartWing blackout shade in my media room and even in the living room downstairs, since ambient light leaks from there too. When the Pioneer turns off, triggered by the Sofa Button, Home Assistant re-enables the lighting automation and reopens both shades. Another automation uses the Apple TV directly. Because it shows up in Home Assistant, I set up a trigger that turns on the wall light whenever playback is paused, and it turns it off again when playback resumes. Now this is perfect for those snack breaks and when someone is talking mid-movie. And because everything is connected, I also get activity notifications like door sensors or unified camera alerts popping up right on the screen when someone's detected around the house. It is subtle, but it is super useful. The media closet has its own automation too. I've installed a Unified Protect all-in-one sensor on the door. When it opens, it turns on the Nanoleaf LED strip mounted inside of the rack. When it closes, the strip shuts off too. That same sensor also tracks temperature, humidity, and ambient light, and it's been rock solid. Since it uses Bluetooth, it connects straight to my basement's Unified U6 long-range access point without any dongle or bridges. And speaking of temperature, I'm also tracking it visually using a third reality temperature and humidity display sensor attached to the front of the rack. I originally planned to install a cold air return at the base of the closet, but I decided to hold off on it for now. If things heat up, especially after I add a game console or a NAS down the line, I'll revisit that vent and maybe add exhaust fans too at that time. Oh, and for those of you following along, I'll be rebuilding my Home Assistant setup and Thread network soon. So if you're interested in a full breakdown of how that all comes together, stay tuned for that video because it's coming. For manual control, I've added the SmartWings X-Dial remote. It lets me control the media room shade and lighting brightness with a simple twist or press. It's mounted right by the couch, making quick adjustments super convenient. So that's the full breakdown of my media room upgrade 2.0. This wasn't some overnight transformation. I built it up slowly, piece by piece over time, balancing what I actually need with what made sense for my budget. Some parts I reused, others I upgraded, and a few things I completely changed course on after running into real-world limitations. I still have a few things left on my to-do list, like a proper projector screen, maybe a new projector down the line because my BenQ HD3550i is pretty much not as good as it used to be anymore. And I'll probably swap in a unified switch as well just to tidy up the rack and keep things fully managed. But for now, This is a space my family and I actually use and enjoy, and that really is the goal right here. If you're building something similar, the best advice I can give you is start with what you have. Plan ahead and let the space evolve as you live inside of it. If you have any questions or want to know more about specific parts of my setup, feel free to drop them in the comment section below and I'll do my best to answer all your questions. Thank you for watching and I'll catch you in the next one. Ty, peace out.